It all started with those Friday raids. The same day, perhaps the most infamous deportee was brought back to the U.S. from El Salvador, where Kilmar Abrego Garcia was sent in March with other alleged gang members, but the Supreme Court had ordered the Trump administration facilitate his return. However, he's not free. Abrego Garcia is jailed in Tennessee facing federal human trafficking charges.
Over the past 9 years, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring.
Attorney General Pam Bondi, if convicted, he faces prison time and then possibly deportation again.
He's been doing this for years, is the point. Probably smuggled, we think, close to 1,000 illegal aliens, including MS-13 gang members. This is exactly the type of individual we want out of the country.
Congressman Michael McCaul is a Republican from Texas. He's also vice chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee and chairman emeritus of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And we talked to him early Monday afternoon.
I was a federal prosecutor at one time myself, that he will get convicted and he'll be in prison here. And then when he's done with his time, he'll be deported back to El Salvador. But what I've really been amazed at is how the Democrats really held him up as like a golden boy sort of poster child, cause celeb, that they're all going to rally behind this guy who, you know, the more we find out about him, the worse it gets. He's beats his wife. He's an MS-13 gang member. He transported illegally, smuggled thousands of gang members. And this is why Trump won the election. People are just sick and tired of this, and they want bad people. They want these criminal and gang members out of the country, and that's what they were trying to do. And I think when he was pulled over before he was arrested, there were 8 individuals in his car, all without luggage. That says something right there. And all the passengers provided the same home address as Garcia. That's a classic human trafficking sign when they don't have any luggage, and they all claim to be related or family members of this person at that one address. Well, they're not related to Garcia. They're in the car. They're being smuggled to his home to be trafficked, whether it be human or sex trafficking. It's exactly the type of person you just don't want in this country.
His supporters say, well, he was helping people, transporting them for work, and he wasn't arrested that day. He was let go. He had an expired license, but there were no charges brought against him that day. And when he was deported, they say there were no criminal charges to back up the deportation. And they say he's not a gang member. He's a sheet worker and a father in Maryland. That's what the supporters say.
Well, and you're right. He was not arrested after that, although I think there would have been a lot of suspicion. This was also, under the Biden administration, where we saw countless times where aggravated felons were released. In fact, I remember Secretary Mayorkas, I was one of the impeachment managers. The reason, and I don't take that lightly, the reason I felt it was justified was he wrote a memo to his agents at the border and to ICE and to CBP and Border Patrol not to adhere to the statutory requirement that says shall detain aggravated felons, but rather says, well, use your own judgment. If you use your own discretion, well, as a lawmaker, shall means shall. There's no discretion there. And so he's giving his agents powers that defy the statute and federal law itself. So what they did was, for lack of detention space as well, they started releasing all these aggravated felons into the country. And that's probably how Mr. Garcia got out on the streets, as well. And he was finally returned after he was sent back to El Salvador. But then his return, you're correct, he was indicted in Tennessee on the human smuggling charges upon his return.
Okay, you said you're a prosecutor, obviously, in your past before you were a member of Congress. This is what his attorney had to say. He said there's no way a jury is going to see the evidence and agree that this sheet metal worker, talking about this client, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, is the leader of an international MS-13 smuggling conspiracy. Do they have to prove he's the leader of the conspiracy to be involved in smuggling?
No. I mean, all they have to show is that he was part of a conspiracy to transport undocumented aliens. It doesn't even have to be gang members, although the indictment does spell out that they were thousands of undocumented immigrants, including minors and also alleged MS-13 members. But it's not necessary that they be MS-13. It's not necessary that he be the leader of the conspiracy. It's just that he was a part of the conspiracy.
They also allege he was a participant in the killing of a gang member's mother. However, he's not charged with that. Is that a charge they would bring coming, or is that something you add in there to just get the judge to make sure that the person's not released?
Right. It could be they don't have adequate evidence to make that case yet. However, if they do, they can file what's called a superseding indictment that would add that charge to the conspiracy to transport the undocumented aliens charge. So that's still possibly very viable. I think that they probably have more investigation to do, because once you indict a case, then you're kind of limited in terms of discovery. So I'm sure they're getting more evidence on that.
All right, now let's get back to the case involving his deportation. Democrats certainly had been rallying, and there were a lot of protests to bring him back, which ultimately happened. In April, Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat, went to El Salvador, met with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I want you to hear what he has to say.
I have repeatedly said that we're not vouching for Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We are vouching for his constitutional rights, because if you trample over his constitutional rights, you threaten them for every American and everybody who resides in America.
What is your thought when you hear that?
I do find it interesting. I mean, look, I get the argument, due process and the Constitution. Obviously, the Supreme Court agreed with that, but the extent to which they are attaching themselves to this man from just a purely political optics scenario, I think it just looks terrible. We had the Secretary of Homeland testify, Christine Owen, before our committee. The entire hearing was about this one man, picture up on a poster, literally the poster child, the poster boy for the Democrats at that hearing. So, and they can say that about due process, and, perhaps they're right about that. But I just think attaching themselves so closely to this dangerous criminal who was, according to the indictment, smuggling MS-13 gang members. I don't think the American people are really going to have a lot of empathy for that, no matter what the process was. And it's precisely why President Trump won by such a large margin.
Now, the court rulings against him on other deportations, there are people who they want returned from El Salvador. There's a Guatemalan man who was returned after being deported. There's lots of legal challenges to what the president is doing. Do you think that he might lose some more of these cases and this puts his agenda at risk?
I think these are just a handful of cases where they were swept up in raids and perhaps he didn't pay attention to all the details. But this is not indicative of what's happening across the country. I think this is kind of a small segment. There have been about 14,000 aggravated felons arrested since the president came into office. Those are dangerous actors that have no right to be in this country. Under our Constitution, have no right to be in this country.
Some of those illegal immigrants with criminal records were arrested Friday in Los Angeles in those much protested immigration raids.
ICE was serving a series of criminal warrants at a business being investigated for money laundering, customs fraud.
Reporters our Tom Homan also tells Fox,
So we're arresting bad people.
One of those taken into custody is a convicted murderer.
Well, when you have AOC saying we need to occupy every ICE office, Karen Bass, the mayor, LA, saying ICE is sowing terror, San Diego councilman saying this is state-sponsored terrorism. Yeah, the rhetoric is ratcheting up, but I know that the goal here, that the ones that they're targeting are the aggravated felons that the Biden administration let into this country. And I think most Americans agree that they don't have a right to be here, and they don't want them to be here because it's a safety issue. And so I think it's generated a lot of hatred. What's interesting, Dave, is when I chaired the Homeland Security Committee, I authorized the Department of Homeland Security, and overwhelmingly, the majority of Democrats voted to authorize ICE into law. That just shows you how far we've come since that time, and that was probably 8 years ago.
But they have Democrats saying communities are in fear. It's forcing these people to live in the shadows and live underground.
Well, that's where the sanctuary city term comes into play. And so when you had ICE targeting this Home Depot business, that's why the LAPD could not assist them when they were throwing, they were physically assaulting officers. They were setting vehicles on fire, blocking freeways, throwing rocks, cement. That's not acceptable. These are federal law enforcement officers, and to obstruct their duties and to assault them is the federal offense.
How does it not escalate further?
Well, I think the first step is when we get all the aggravated felons, and there are probably about 200,000 of them that were released into the country. You know, I know from my days, you can't arrest everybody. You don't want to. You have to prioritize your resources. And by the way, deterrence has worked because the illegal crossings at the border have gone down to almost zero now. Catch and release is not happening anymore. There's going to be a return to remain in Mexico. That is having a significant impact on how many people cross in here illegally. And with the resources we're providing with the reconciliation bill, we'll be able to back that up with resources, technology, aviation assets, finishing the wall, everything we need to finally get that border secure once and for all. Then I think you can have the debate on immigration reform, which some would argue is long overdue, but you couldn't get to that point when you had a wide open border like we saw under the Biden administration.
Congressman Michael McCaul represents the 10th District in Texas as a Republican, also vice chair of the House Homeland Security Committee, chairman emeritus of House Foreign Affairs, a member of both committees still. Great to talk to you.